going to be 2 cups of white sugar, 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon or so of salt, 3 sticks of butter, 1 cup of water, 8 tablespoons of regular cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of Dutch cocoa powder, 1/3 cup of milk or buttermilk if you'd like, 1 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 2 large eggs, 3 1/4 cup of powdered sugar, and half a cup sour cream. And that's going to be all the ingredients that you'll need to make both the cake and the icing. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to preheat our oven and line our cookie sheet. So the one that I'm using is, it's a round 17 by 11-ish. It's going to vary from person to person or pan to pan how big it is, but this one fits in this pan. It's the larger cookie sheet. When I was growing up, I always wondered why there was a lip on this pan because we always just used it for cookies, but this is actually a cake pan. So this cake being a denser cake, it won't rise beyond it. So this is the pan that we're gonna use, and it's gonna fit all of our cake in it. So I think first I'll go ahead and I'll preheat the oven to 350, just so we can get that started. This is gonna be one where it is worth spending a little bit of time to make sure that you have like your corners, your edges, that it's all flat down, tucked in. You'll probably use your fingertip, but my nails are too long and I'll poke it. So you just make sure that it's tucked into the corner there. And then now that we have that covered, we're just going to go ahead and spray it really quick with a little bit of grease spray. It is. I mean, it's generic. It's a mystery brand spray. I don't know what brand it is, but it's probably Pam. So just a light spray. Probably did a little too much there in the middle, but that's okay. So then we'll just go ahead and we'll set this aside. And now we'll go ahead and we'll get our pot and we'll get started with our first couple of ingredients. You always got to start with the pot. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do now that our oven's preheated is we're going to start heating up in here the 1 cup of water and 2 of the sticks of butter. I'm going to put it on a little bit low because there's a couple things I want to do while this is heating up and melting the butter.
Butter water.
I know. It seems really weird. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, wait, you're making cake and you're starting by making butter water? It does seem weird, but it's going to make sense in a minute. And if you've ever had it, you already know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to put that on like a low medium on mine and let that start melting the butter and just keep an eye on that. So now that our butter water is starting to simmer, we're going to go ahead and add our dry ingredients. Wow, this jar's not going to fool me this time. So this jar just measures it for me. If you watch our other videos, I had an unfortunate incident where I scooped out the entire thing to realize it was exactly 4 cups, which is what I needed. Not this time. Not today. So there's our flour. 2 cups. We're going to do granulated sugar, also 2 cups. 1 and 2. Then we're going to do 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Not baking powder, does matter. If you know anything about baking, you know that, but when I was new, I didn't realize it mattered, so just keep that in mind. And then we're going to add one last thing, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And just to point out, in case you're like me and realize something didn't quite sound right, it is salted butter and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I definitely recommend that because this cake can be a little bit rich. And so, just put the extra in the garbage. This cake can be a little bit rich. So Definitely make sure you use salted butter and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then now that we have our 4 dry ingredients in here, we're going to go ahead and just start whisking these together to make sure that they're nice and incorporated. And you really don't want any lumps. So I did not need to sift my flour last time I did this recipe. It turned out great. But just make sure that while you're kind of like whisking your dry ingredients together, that there aren't any lumps. If you find any, kind of like rub your whisk or your spoon or whatever against the edge, kind of break it up and really make sure that it's all fine particles, because this cake, it's really dense. It lays a really thick little like layer of cake. If there's a bunch of lumps, then they're going to show through both the cake and your icing. So nice fine mix is going to be best. And so I'll kind of just make sure, check the edges, all of that. Right about now is when you should be looking back at your water, your butter water, making sure it's not doing anything too crazy. So now that we're done with this, we'll go ahead and we'll check on that. So you kind of get this like Jessie called it, butter water. So you can kind of stir it together a little bit if you want, but it'll incorporate easier once we add cocoa powder to this. That'll be coming next. But we want these pieces of butter to be all the way melted. So this is perfect. We're right on track. It's about halfway melted. And so then we're going to do another step to help ourselves out once this starts cooking. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that to continue melting, and we're going to start our next preparation step. So now we're going to do probably one of the even weirder steps for this cake, that weirder than butter water. So we're going to start by adding our 2 eggs to a small bowl. And we're going to use our whisk. And we're just going to lightly beat the eggs together till they're a good consistency. You don't want them fluffy or anything, but just combined. And that is good. So we're going to go ahead and add now a 1/2 cup of sour cream. You can also use buttermilk if you'd like, but I personally like sour cream better. If anybody puts a 1/2 cup of sour cream on your one taco, that's just too much, man. When I saw that, I thought, uh-oh, now I'm going to find out how much a 1/2 cup of sour cream is. But I don't eat that much sour cream. That's gross. That's too much. But, you know, don't let me rain on your parade. If that's what you like, you eat it. So that's the 1/2 cup there. We'll just go ahead and plop that right into the egg mixture. And then we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, or if you're familiar with my style, we're going to do a bloop. It's kind of just an eyeball amount. There we go. I like to add vanilla to chocolate things because vanilla brings out a little bit of that chocolate flavor. If you feel like you want something to really have a nice, like, not too strong, but a little bit of like that bam chocolate, like, this is good. Vanilla will help kind of bring out that mellow chocolate taste. So now we're just going to combine the eggs, the sour cream, and the vanilla. And again, it's kind of a weird thing to do. It looks very weird. But this is part of the secret to making this cake really moist and rich and tasty. And with that done, we're going to go check on our butter water. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit because we have a little bit of boiling happening, but still some unmelted butter. Just kind of stir it. Get that butter all melted. Once it is, then we're going to go ahead and add some cocoa. So this right here is going to be a little sift that we'll use. And this is going to help our cocoa powder not be, well, you know, cocoa powder. So 1/4 cup is going to be 4 tablespoons. It's an equivalent measurement. So just get your 1/4 cup scoop and scoop out 1/4 cup of regular cocoa into our sift. And then I'm also going to do 1 teaspoon of the Dutched cocoa. Dutched cocoa is not a requirement. You could just use the 4 tablespoons of regular cocoa, but I feel like it adds a little bit of extra flavor that I really like. And so then we're just going to go ahead and use the sifter to break up the chunks. Just pat it against your hand. Just kind of be mindful of like where it's going, because if you're sifting and you're not paying attention, you're possibly making a big mess on the other side of your pan where you can't see it. So, and some recipes it says don't, like, make sure that you don't push through these pieces. Some of them say do. I found with this recipe that it is good to do that, so I'll just take my tablespoon or my teaspoon measuring cup or measuring spoon, just kind of break up some of those pieces, push them through, and that works really good. There are going to be a little bit of crumbs left in the bottom. I'm just going to go ahead and leave them. We're going to keep using this, so I'm going to set that aside. And now I'm just going to go ahead and combine this cocoa into this butter water. Once it's combined, we're going to bring it to a boil. Once it boils, as soon as it's boiling, we're going to take it over and we're going to combine it with our flour mixture. So once this is heating up, make sure your flour mixture is ready. It's in a place that's easy to bring this hot pot over to, just because obviously boiling hot chocolate, butter, water, don't want that going in the wrong place. So we'll just go ahead and let this simmer up, and then once it's ready, we're going to incorporate that into our flour mixture. I like to keep stirring it, make sure that nothing's like sticking and it's well incorporated, but I also like to leave it alone, let it boil for a minute without you touching it, and then once you kind of have that even little bit of everywhere, this is good enough for me. I'm going to go ahead and call that boiling. And so what we'll do now is we'll turn this off and we'll go ahead and incorporate this hot stuff into our flour mixture. Okay, so here's where we're very carefully going to pour hot chocolate water into our flour. Again, be aware of your surroundings. Just kind of incorporating it gently as I'm pouring it. And then here's a hot tip for you. Take your hot pan, set it back down on the hot burner so no one gets burned in the meantime. And then now we're just going to incorporate this flour and chocolate mixture. Again, be careful. It's still really hot. If this splashes up on you, it's going to burn like, well, like the Dickens will say. YouTube will appreciate that. Again, we're wanting to get rid of any lumps, so I like to take my tool kind of around the bowl and then mix through and look for any lumpy bits. Again, if you find any, kind of push them up against the side of the bowl. Really try to get rid of any of those lumps if there are any in there. This one is a little bit of an arm workout. It's not too bad. You can use a hand mixer if you'd like to, but you don't want to overbeat this batter. It will make it too fluffy. So I like to use my whisk that has metal wires inside of it, so it has a little bit more strength than a really floppy whisk, but it's still silicone. So that is what I'd recommend to use so that you don't over mix. Okay, so now that we've got this pretty well, yeah, I'm happy with that, pretty well smooth, we're going to incorporate now this sour cream, egg, and vanilla mixture. So we'll just go ahead and pour that right on it. And then just incorporate that as well.
Carmsters Incorporated.
Exactly. Yeah, people think that bakers are like out of shape or something just because they eat sweets. They might have a belly, but they got a strong arm, I'll tell you that, if they're making anything good. You got to. Okay, so now we've got it nice and incorporated. I'm happy with, you can't see any like white bits or anything, no lumps really. It is still a little bit lumpy, but no big chunks or anything. So with that, our cake batter is actually done. We're going to pour it into our pan, and then we'll put our pan in the oven at that 350. We're going to start at 15 minutes, And we're going to keep checking our cake really regularly because we do not want to overcook it. You want it to just be done enough that if you touch it, it kind of springs back and it's not sticky or anything like that. So 15 to 20 minutes depending on your oven. So let's go ahead and do that. You don't want to over pour, so if you're not sure about your pan, start slow and add more as you go. And then you're going to want to try to get this as level as you can. Kind of spread the batter out, make sure there's nowhere that it's short or shallow. And it'll look like it's pretty even until you kind of mess with it and nudge it around and then break that surface tension, and it'll kind of reveal that it's not quite as even as it looks. So just try to mess with it till it kind of looks even, you know, check it at low level. If your oven's a little uneven like mine is, it might still cook a little off, but that's okay. That's as even as we're gonna get it. So now we're gonna put it in the oven, center rack at 350 for 15 minutes. And while that 15 minutes is going, we're gonna grab our hot pan that we used, and we're gonna take, like I do at my house, you can do this however you want. Grab a new pot if you want, but what I would do is grab a paper towel, take your pot, and just carefully, because it's gonna be a little warm still, just wipe it out. And you definitely wanna wipe it out all the way. You don't want any little chunks of this cake mix that's left in here messing up the icing, which is what we're gonna do next. The reason that I'm wiping it out and not just washing it is because then it would kind of shock the metal. If I rinse it, it's going to cool it down a lot. It's going to have to heat up a lot to get hot again. This way, my pan doesn't warp. I save a little bit of water. Good for the environment. Used a paper towel. Bad for the environment. Cancels itself out. We good. So now we're going to go ahead and do the icing. And that is going to be that other stick of butter. So we'll go ahead and toss this stick of butter in here, get it melting. Again, I'm going to do kind of a low heat, and see, because I didn't wash it, it already starts melting right away because the pan's still nice and hot. And then we're going to add 1/3 cup of milk. So we'll go ahead, we'll add 1/3 cup of milk here to the butter mix. This one is the 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, or just like a splash of vanilla. Again, I'm going to do a bloop. And then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to let this butter melt down until it's all one liquid, and then we're going to add the cocoa powder. It's going to be the same exact cocoa powder. It's going to be our 1/4 cup of the regular, and then the 1 teaspoon of the Dutched cocoa. Forgot to mention it, but when you scoop for the cake, leave your spoon, your 1 teaspoon and your 1/4 cup in the container, because we're just going to use them again here for the same measurements. So that's why I left it in there. So we're going to just make this a little bit easy on ourselves and get this done ahead of time. We need to add that 3 cups, 3 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. We want that to be ready for this. So we're going to start sifting some of that powdered sugar out ahead of time so that we have it in this bowl here. And you do want to sift this powdered sugar. I hate sifting ingredients. I feel like it's really silly, but for this recipe, it is honestly worth it. But again, because it makes a little bit of a mess when you do this sifting, try to find a bowl and a sifter that fit good together, where you can just put your hand on the edge of the bowl, tap it, and it goes in and it doesn't make a big mess. But with my sifter, like, I know there's other types, ones with like a little lever in them and stuff, like where you turn the side. Something like that would probably be better for this, but I don't ever sift anything except for these ingredients, so I just stick with this little cheap one I think I got at maybe the dollar store or something. So that was the first cup of powdered sugar. Here's the second cup. And again, we're just keeping an eye on our timer for our cake, keeping an eye on our butter that's melting over here. When we're done with this pot of butter, milk, and hot cocoa mix, we're going to add this powdered sugar to it. But I need it to already be sifted, and I need it to go in while it's hot and while the cake is hot. And so that's why we're going to sift our powdered sugar ahead of time like this. This is a great job if you have someone who wants to help but doesn't know as much about it, or maybe likes, you know, a kid that you trust with this job but not maybe something hot. This would be a great thing they can do while you're working on the cake. They can sift the ingredients for you into a bowl. That way it's just a little bit faster for you later. And there is our 3rd cup. And so now I'm just going to measure out the 4th cup, but I'm going to leave it in here for now. This time I'm not going to push through the little crumbs in the bottom. I'm just going to toss them. So now we're going to do what we did last time. We're going to add the same thing to our sifter. 1/4 cup of regular cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon of the Dutched cocoa powder. Just sift that into our milk butter mixture. And again, kind of just squish some of these, get out what we can. Perfect. And then now, same thing, we're just going to incorporate this together and bring it to a boil. We really want to make sure that we get it all the way incorporated. And then we're going to let it simmer. Or, excuse me, we're going to bring it to a simmer. So now while this is coming to a boil, I'm just going to keep stirring. I forgot the salt. There should also be a little dash of salt in the icing. Just like a pinch. And so it looks like it does have a nice simmer all around. So now we're going to go ahead, while that's simmering, we're going to check on our cake. Oh, and it looks beautiful. Okay, it looks like we have a little bit of that juicy spot over here because my oven kind of leans this way. So this side looks a little bit thick, but this side I can tell it's already ready. It's kind of springing back to the touch. So we have kind of the thicker side, doesn't look quite done. Over here though, oh, carefully. You can kind of touch it, it's bouncy, it springs back. Over here, still a little bit sticky. So we have 2 more minutes left, so that 15 minutes is perfect for my oven. You know, kind of experiment with yours, but we're going to let it cook 2 more minutes. This is all good though. So now that our icing is ready, we're going to turn the heat off, pull off of the heat, and now we're just going to go ahead and stir in all of this very soft, light powdered sugar. Ooh, try to do it gently. And it's going to seem weird at first. I know what you're thinking. That does not look right, Carmen. Like, I don't think powdered sugar is going to help you. It looks kind of wet or kind of dry. It's going to look a little weird at first, but once you start to add that powdered sugar, I'm assuming it's just that it melts the sugar, makes it more of a liquid. This is definitely not like buttercream frosting or anything like that where you get a thicker frosting. If you added too much icing, it would get thick, but as you can see, with this 3 1/4 cup, it just kind of turns into a nice thick hot icing. And so what we're going to do now that we are done with the powdered sugar, we're done adding any more, we're just going to keep stirring this together, kind of bring it up on the sides, really get it to grab any of that dry powdered sugar that's left. And that's because when we go to pour this, I don't want a bunch of powdered sugar to fall on my cake because I want it to be like a nice glassy top. I don't want a powdered sugar top. And then because my cake isn't quite done, I'm going to put this back on the hot burner keep stirring it, make sure it doesn't like burn or overheat or anything. But I need this to be nice and hot, and that's how we'll get that glassy top. Okay. Now we can see here the difference. See, I can now touch this top bit and it kind of bounces back. It doesn't stick to me. It's not leaving anything behind. It's almost done. I'm going to go ahead and call it done because with this cake, it's like a brownie. A little bit underdone is still good, especially because this side's a little skinny. We don't want to overdo that side. So let's go ahead and take this out. And then I'm just going to reactivate my icing really quick, stir it back up, make it nice and soft. And then we're just going to pour it right onto our hot cake. And have your spatula on hand ready. And then you're just going to spread that around quickly, but carefully because it's hot still, so keep that in mind. Okie dokie, I'm pretty happy with that. And so now we're going to let the cake set. As it starts to set, you'll kind of see that glassy top form. It looks like I was a little bit slow on getting it all smoothed out, so you can see kind of some of my spatula lines. If you don't want that, if you want it to be like super perfect, then a couple things you can do is make sure that your cake's already out when your icing is ready to pour so that it's fresh and hot. And then just kind of, I guess if my cake was more even, that would help too. So make sure your cake or your oven is even, and that way your cake is more of a smooth surface. But honestly, this one's definitely going to be good enough for our house. And this is perfect because it'll be ready to eat in about 10 or 15 minutes, but you can also put it in the refrigerator covered loosely. And if you do that, then it's good for like 2 weeks, and it's a great like party cake. You can put it in the fridge and then take it to a party a day or two later, and it still turns out great. So there it is. We'll probably give it 20 minutes to cool down, and then we'll do a little cross section for you guys. So here we have our cake. It's been sitting probably about an hour to cool down. What's really great about this cake is that this is all you need to serve a piece of cake, just a nice little spatula. It's going to cut really nicely for us. There we go. And there you have it, Texas sheet cake, straight out of Washington. It's definitely best to put it in the fridge before serving it, I think, because it cuts up a lot nicer when it's been refrigerated. There's something about the chemistry of the fridge, too, that makes it taste really good. But, yeah, here it is still a little bit warm. We'll go ahead and cut into it for you guys. You can kind of see how that looks. It's super soft, really dense, kind of like a brownie, but honestly better. I like brownies, but not as much as I like chocolate cake, and this is like the best of both worlds. So here we go. Let's test it out. Oh yeah. It's just so like soft, moist. It's like good chocolatey, like rich, but not too much. I think it's perfect. It is my recipe that I've kind of tweaked, so you know, there's that, but I think it's good. I approve.